The minimum wage comes from prayer. Company-paid health insurance and doctor care comes from organization. Prayer never paid any doctor bills. Poor fool. A steady job comes from organization. A steady hunger comes from prayer. Now get the fallacy of it? A while ago he said that our guys are getting the jobs in the place of the socialists. And then he says down here, a steady job comes from organization, not prayer. What the poor fool doesn't realize, all the praying our folks been doing for jobs, that's all. He says the prayers are getting all the jobs. Then he says jobs come from organization, not prayer. I'd like to tell him a few things. I'd like to tell him some stories. How that God has reached to heaven's bounty and dropped things over the portals of heaven and down to earth to this preacher time and time and time again. I'd like to tell him a few things. Some of you college students, God bless you. When I enrolled in East Texas Baptist College in Marshall, Texas, the greenest preacher boy that ever went off to school, I didn't have one dime in my pocket. Not one dime in my pocket. Not one dime! I got on my knees on the courthouse square, Marshall, Texas, a town of 22,000 people, county seat. Got up on the courthouse square and got on my knees and I said, oh, God, take care of my needs. Oh, Lord, I don't have any money and I need a job. Oh, God, give me a job. I looked up and I saw the J.C. Penney Company down the street. Looked down the street and I walked right. I said, Lord, give me a job there. J.C. Penney Company. I got off money, folks walking by and laughing at me and making fun because I was on my knees with my Bible open on the courthouse square. And I walked down to J.C. Penney Company, and then I had an open Bible when I walked in. I walked in and asked a fellow, where is the manager? They said, there he is, big, fat fellow, a lot big bushy head of gray hair. And I walked over and I said, Mr. Croft? He said, yes. I said, my name is Jack Hyles. He said, what can I do for you? I said, I think I'm going to work here. He said, you going to work here? He said, we just laid off 4 men because the summer slump in business. And he said, we don't need anybody. And he said, well, who told you to go to work here? And I said, just a few minutes ago, Mr. Croft, up on the courthouse square, I opened my Bible to Jeremiah 33:3. Said, call on me and I'll answer thee and show thee great and mighty things that thou knowest not. And I asked God for a job and looked down here and I thought God wanted to give me a job here. And I said, I think I'm going to work here. He looked at me and he said, you're hired. I never forget what he said. He said, you're either going to be the best salesman this store's ever had or the biggest flop in the history of this county. And he said, I'd die if I didn't find out which one. I'll give you 2 guesses which one it was. You run faster when you're hungry and scared. And I went to work. Now, I didn't organize that job down from God. No, I didn't. When I graduated from high school, many of you heard me tell the story. We didn't have caps and gowns. My mother came to me the day before graduation. No, I'm sorry, the morning of graduation. She said, son, you can't graduate tonight. And I said, why? And she said, because you've got to have a new suit and a tie, and we don't have any money. We live together, the 2 of us live alone together. We don't have any money. And she said, I'm sorry, I just don't have it. I don't know where to get it. And I went back in the little back room of our little apartment and got on my knees and opened my Bible. And I said, dear God, I want to graduate, and I pray you'd give me a suit of clothes before tonight. I was on my knees. The postman came. A letter to Jack Hyles. I was only a 17-year-old lad. From my Uncle Harvey, God bless him, he's in heaven now. Uncle Harvey wrote me a letter. And he said, dear Jack, I heard you were graduating. I didn't have time to buy you a present. I hope this $50 check will do. It would do. Very fine. Back in those days, you could buy a whole wardrobe for $50. And I went down to Reynolds Penman Men's Store in Dallas. I can still see that little suit, that little, I forget what they call it, nail heads. Is there nail head material? Huh? What has a little... Oh, you're dumb. And I can see that suit, and I got me a pair of shoes, and I got me a tie, and I got me a pair of socks, and I got me a new white shirt. And that night I walked across the platform of the McFarland Auditorium at SMU campus, in Dallas where we had our graduation for Adamson High School. They called my name, and I walked across the platform. And as I walked across the platform, you couldn't convince me there was no living God. I knew there was a God that answered prayer and provided for the needs of His own. While I was on my knees, you say, "Hey, that's sort of a hand-to-mouth existence." Yes, from God's hand to my mouth, been that way for years. For years. Yeah, there's a God in heaven. There's a God in heaven. Yes, there is. And you don't organize jobs, you pray down jobs. It's a funny thing. All these folks that organization does so much, why you spend so much time killing each other? Fighting, rioting. I never have had a strike. Suppose I got me a placard out here in the front, walked down saying, "Unfair preachers." Unfair preachers. Did you know most of the school teachers in our schools would qualify for welfare? I mean that. I mean it. Most of the teachers in Hammond Baptist Grade School, Hammond Baptist High School, and Hyles Henderson College, if they applied, could get food stamps. Hey, get it. We can sell the food. Raise enough money for the college. This kind of garbage and trash is going to destroy this country if we don't start meaning business for God. Now, let me say this. Listen to this now. We believe that most workers will shed the bonds of religion sooner or later and make the fight for our own salvation in the here and now. Now listen to me. This kind of stuff. Now, if we're in control, we give them the right to put out this stuff. But if they're in control, they don't give anybody the right to put out plenty of material. You pass out some tracts in Russia. You go to Cuba, have a few street services. One of the saddest things that's happened in our generation is that we don't hate the word communism anymore. Every time God's people hear the word communism, their ears on a twitch, and their face on a flush, and their fist on a clench, and their blood pressure ought to go up, and their anger ought to be stirred. Why? Because it's against everything that you and I hold dear and precious. Everything. I've heard old Dr. Rice say many times, he say when you mention sin, don't just say you're against it. Stomp your foot. Beat the pulpit. Holler! Scream! Why? Not only why, because this kind of stuff would close the doors of this church, kill this preacher, burn these Bibles, and by the way, the same pagan philosophy will take your kids away from you. Look, it's not the boss that they're after. And it's any authority other than the state, any authority other than the socialistic system. That's why they hate Christianity, because Christianity says follow God and not man. And when we have someone to whom we give our allegiance, they don't like it. That's why they hate the home. That's why in America tonight there is a serious move afoot to take our children out of our homes. That's what this, by the way, that's what this seemingly innocent child care business is all about. The government has the kids now from the time they're 5 to the time they're 18. They go to a state school, the government has them from 5 through 22. And now they want to get them from 1 through 4. Why? They want your child to give first allegiance to the state and not to mom and dad. Now I say this. And I'll say this to encourage your heart. We are their biggest threat. And I've never seen a day in my ministry when I was as encouraged as I am right now about the hope. There's something, and I can't tell you this, Can't say what it is. There's something going to go on week after next, of which I'll be a part. That's going to be one of the most exciting things that's happened in America in a long time. Organizing in some way to help us keep our freedoms. I don't know all about it myself, but I know enough to know that it could be the dawn of a day where God's people who are born again might start being able to work together to save our freedoms and vote together and stand together and put some decent people in office again in America and alert America when laws are passed. Now that are passed secretly, alert us so we'll know. And besides that, there are more great churches growing up across this nation than any country in the history of the world's ever known. Ever known. Did you know America